Dad said we live here now. My brother's pregnant girlfriend was already unpacking when I got home. 3 years ago, I bought my first house. Not a mansion. Not some rich guy McMansion with fake pillars and a 6-car garage. Just a normal 3-bedroom house. Mine. Every square foot paid for by years of saying no to fun. No vacations. No spring break trips. No stupid impulse purchases. No dropping $700 on limited edition gaming collectibles. Because a grown man convinced himself plastic toys were investments. Meanwhile, Tyler existed. God. Tyler, my younger brother, somehow spent his entire adult life failing upward. You ever meet someone who treats consequences like they're optional DLC? That was Tyler. Crash a car? Dad buys another. Lose a job? Dad covers rent. Max out a credit card? Dad saves him. Get a girl pregnant after 4 months? Apparently that's everyone else's emergency, especially mine. Because obviously, why wouldn't it be? I should have known something was wrong. When Dad called me 2 weeks before the apocalypse, the man sounded way too cheerful. Whenever Dad sounded cheerful, somebody else was about to get screwed. Usually me. Great news energy. Family catastrophe energy disguised as optimism. Classic. I remember standing in my kitchen while he explained his genius solution. Tyler and Jessica needed somewhere to stay. I had spare rooms. Therefore, my brain actually stopped working for a second. I genuinely thought he was joking. I laughed. The kind of laugh you do when somebody says something so insane your brain assumes satire. Then he kept talking, and I realized, oh, no, he's serious. This old man really sat down and thought, you know who should be financially responsible for Tyler's unborn child? Michael, the son we've treated like an emotional support mule for 29 years. Brilliant. Absolutely inspired. Give this man a TED Talk. I told him no. Simple. Direct. Beautiful little word. No. The problem is my family hears no. The same way normal people hear background elevator music. They don't process it. They think it's decorative. A suggestion. An opening bid in negotiations. Dad immediately started explaining. Then Sharon started calling. Then Tyler. Then Jessica. Then random relatives I'd forgotten existed. At one point, Jessica's mother called me. I had literally never met this woman. Not once. Not ever. Yet suddenly she had detailed opinions about my spare bedroom. Imagine getting a phone call from a complete stranger, asking why you're not housing her pregnant daughter. The audacity was almost artistic. Like performance art. Like somebody should have filmed it. Then came yesterday, the day my last shred of patience packed its bags and left. I got home from work. Long day, tired, hungry, dreaming about leftover pizza. Nothing fancy, just wanted peace. Instead, I turned onto my street and saw a U-Haul parked in my driveway. At first, I thought maybe somebody got the wrong address. Then I saw Tyler's car. On my lawn, my actual lawn. Not beside it, not near it, on it. Like the grass personally owed him money. And suddenly I knew. I just knew. That awful feeling when reality walks up and punches you directly in the face. There was Jessica sitting on my porch surrounded by boxes. Actual moving boxes. Like they were filming the pilot episode of Squatters Family Edition. Then I saw Tyler, at my back door, trying to open it. With a freaking credit card. I just sat in my car for 3 seconds. Maybe 4. Trying to process the absolute clown show unfolding in front of me. Because surely, nobody is this stupid, right? Wrong. Tyler looked up, saw me, smiled, like I was arriving at a surprise birthday party. Oh, hey, Mike. That smile. That stupid smile. The confidence of a man who has never once been forced to solve his own problems. I got out of the car, my soul already leaving my body. The words came out before I could stop them. What the hell are you doing? And here's the thing. He didn't even look guilty. Not even a little. Not a single ounce of shame. The man had all the self-awareness of a Roomba. Apparently, Dad had told him I agreed. Dad had just decided. Decided my house belonged to everyone. Decided my consent wasn't required. Decided reality worked however he wanted. That's when Jessica started crying. Of course she did, because somehow every disaster in this family eventually turns into me. Being cast as the villain in a Hallmark movie, pregnant woman crying, brother acting offended, everyone staring at me, like I was kicking puppies, like I was personally responsible for creating homelessness. Like I had secretly invented bad decisions. I remember looking around at the boxes, the U-Haul, the porch, the lawn, my house, and feeling something weird. Not anger, not exactly. More like clarity. Pure crystal clear clarity. The kind that happens when someone finally pushes too hard, too far, too many times. Because suddenly I understood something. These people genuinely believed this would work. They really thought if they showed up with enough boxes, enough tears, enough pressure, I'd cave. Like every other time, like always. And honestly, that realization hurt more than anything. Not because they were trying to move in, because they thought so little of me, they thought my boundaries were fake. My choices negotiable, my life available for public use. That's when I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. The silence that followed, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Like watching somebody unplug the soundtrack to a bad movie. And standing there while Tyler's face changed from confidence to confusion to pure panic, I realized something. This wasn't about a spare room anymore. This wasn't about family. This wasn't about a baby. This was war. And unfortunately for them, I'd spent my entire life preparing for it without even knowing. The funny thing about finally snapping is that people expect you to feel guilty afterward. Like there's supposed to be some magical emotional hangover, some dramatic movie scene where I sit alone in the dark staring at family photos while sad piano music plays. Yeah, no. What actually happened was I slept like a freaking rock. 8 uninterrupted hours. No guilt, no regret, just the best sleep I'd had in years, probably because for the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying Tyler's problems around like unpaid emotional luggage. The next morning, I woke up feeling weirdly light. Then my phone exploded. Again, naturally, because peace in this family lasts roughly 4 minutes. 5 if Mercury is in retrograde or whatever excuse people use for bad behavior these days. Text messages, missed calls, voicemails, emails. One Facebook message from a cousin I hadn't spoken to since Obama was president. Everybody's suddenly becoming a relationship expert, a housing expert, a family expert, a morality expert. Funny how nobody became a Tyler needs a job expert. Nobody ever seems interested in that one. Weird, real mystery. Somebody call Sherlock. I ignored most of it, not because I was angry, because honestly, I was getting bored. The arguments were identical. Copy-paste nonsense. Family helps family. They're struggling. Be the bigger person. God, I hate that phrase. Be the bigger person. Translation. Please continue accepting garbage. Treatment because holding people accountable makes us uncomfortable. Pass. Hard pass. Then something happened I wasn't expecting. Eric called. My cousin. One of the few relatives who hadn't completely lost his mind. And for once, somebody wasn't calling to lecture me. He was calling because he'd overheard something. Apparently, Dad had been talking, which was always dangerous. The man treated private information like free samples at Costco. If he knew it, eventually everybody knew it. Turns out he'd been discussing my house for months. Months. Not weeks. Months. At family cookouts, birthday parties, random gatherings. Apparently, he'd already told people Tyler would be moving in, already promised my spare rooms, already described his brilliant rescue plan, without ever getting my permission. I actually laughed. Not happy laughter. The kind of laugh you do when reality becomes so ridiculous, your brain starts buffering. Like, wait, you sold tickets to a show without asking the venue? You announced housing arrangements involving property you don't own? Who does that? Then again, Dad did. That's who. The man operated entirely on confidence. Facts were optional. Consent was optional. Reality was apparently optional. Eric kept talking, and every sentence somehow got worse. Dad wasn't just planning for Tyler to stay. He was planning for me to mentor him. Mentor. That word nearly killed me. I almost choked on coffee. Mentor him in what? How to keep a job longer than 6 weeks? How not to get fired? How not to wreck vehicles? How not to spend your rent money on gaming chairs and cryptocurrency? What exactly was the lesson plan here? Chapter 1. Try literally anything other than whatever Tyler is doing. By noon, I was irritated. By 3 o'clock, I was annoyed. By 5 o'clock, I was installing security cameras, because at some point, instinct started screaming. Something wasn't right. I couldn't explain it. Just a feeling. The same feeling animals probably get before earthquakes. Except my natural disaster had frosted tips in high school and still thought Monster Energy counted as breakfast. The camera guy came out that afternoon. Nice guy. Fast worker, didn't ask questions, which was good because explaining my family always sounded fake. Like I was pitching a rejected sitcom. He finished installation. I tested everything. Motion alerts, recording, cloud storage. Perfect. Best money I'd spent all year. At the time, I thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe. Tiny possibility. Then 3 days later, I got my answer. 3 in the morning, my phone buzzed. Security alert. I opened the app, and there was Tyler, standing in my driveway at 3 freaking a.m., just standing there, like a raccoon trying to solve a puzzle. I stared at the screen, still half asleep, trying to process what I was seeing. Maybe he was drunk. Maybe he'd gotten lost. Maybe aliens had replaced him with a slightly dumber version. Honestly, all three felt equally plausible. But then he started walking around the house, checking windows, looking through the fence, trying doors, and suddenly every remaining ounce of patience evaporated. This wasn't desperation. This was entitlement. Pure entitlement. The belief that eventually I'd crack. Eventually I'd surrender. Eventually I'd hand over the keys. Because that's how things always worked. Except not this time. I texted him immediately. Simple message. I see you on camera. Leave. The response arrived seconds later. He claimed he was checking on me. At 3 in the morning, walking around my property, testing doors? Right. And I'm secretly a billionaire astronaut. Makes exactly the same amount of sense. I saved the footage, backed it up twice, then went back to bed. Because here's the thing. When somebody starts documenting their own stupidity in HD, you don't interrupt. You let them cook. The next surprise came from work. My boss called me into his office. And for one horrifying second, I thought somehow family drama had reached my job, which honestly wouldn't have shocked me. At this point, I expected Dad to start hiring skywriters, maybe rent billboards. Michael is mean to his brother, coming soon to a highway near you. Instead, my boss closed the door, looked uncomfortable, and asked me something weird. Had I told people I was having a mental breakdown? I blinked. What? Apparently somebody had called. Not directly, not professionally, just enough to spread rumors, enough to plant doubts. Enough to be annoying. And immediately I knew. Dad. Or Sharon. Maybe both. Power couple of bad decisions. The dynamic duo of delusion. The family PR department. My boss thankfully wasn't stupid. The man had known me for 7 years. He took one look at me and basically said, whoever started that rumor sounded insane. Which, fair. Objectively fair? Still. The realization hit harder than I expected. Because this wasn't about housing anymore. They were trying to attack credibility. Trying to create a narrative. Trying to make me look unstable. Because unstable people don't have boundaries. Unstable people can be dismissed. And suddenly I understood the real game. They weren't trying to convince me anymore. They were trying to pressure me socially. Damage my reputation. Turn me into the villain. And that's when something inside me completely shut off. Not emotionally. Strategically. Like a switch flipping. Because once somebody starts lying about your sanity, the negotiation phase is over. Finished. Done. Dead. What comes next is documentation, evidence, paper trails, receipts, lots and lots of receipts. And lucky for me, my family was about to provide enough evidence to fill an entire damn library. The weird thing about people who spend years avoiding consequences is that eventually they start believing consequences are a myth, like Bigfoot, or affordable healthcare, or those people who claim they actually read the terms and conditions. Tyler had spent his whole life escaping impact. Every bad decision got padded, every screw-up got softened, every crash landing came with a safety net woven entirely out of dad's money and everybody else's patience. So when reality finally showed up carrying a steel chair, yeah, it got ugly, fast. And the funny part, none of it had anything to do with me anymore. I wasn't doing anything. That was the part driving everyone insane. I wasn't fighting. I wasn't arguing. I wasn't defending myself. I was just existing in my house, paying my bills, going to work, making dinner, living my life. Turns out that's incredibly frustrating for people who need you to participate in the chaos. One Friday afternoon, I got a call from Eric. The second I answered, he laughed. Not a good sign. Good laughs don't start with that much disbelief. What now? I already knew. When your family becomes a traveling circus, every phone call feels like the next episode. Apparently, Tyler had gotten caught shoplifting. Not diapers, not formula, not baby supplies. Because reality loves irony more than any writer ever could. No, the genius got caught stealing electronics. Again, video games, headphones, random expensive crap, things nobody actually needed. And suddenly a bunch of missing inventory from previous months started making sense. Turns out the store had been building a case, recording everything, tracking everything, waiting. And Tyler, being Tyler, kept going. Because why stop digging when you can tunnel straight into the Earth's core? The best part? Actually, no. There were several best parts. This disaster came with layers, like a terrible onion. Every peel somehow made me cry laugh harder. The store manager had footage, months of footage, multiple incidents, different days, different items, an entire greatest hits collection of criminal stupidity. Imagine being so bad at crime that somebody can create a highlight reel, a director's cut, the extended edition, the Tyler cinematic universe. I almost respected the consistency. Almost. Dad called that night. I knew exactly why before answering. You develop instincts. Like animals sensing storms, or homeowners sensing family nonsense. Same thing. The second I picked up, I heard panic. Pure panic. Not concern, not regret. Panic. The sound of somebody realizing their favorite excuse machine had finally broken down. He wanted help. Of course he did. Not advice. Not perspective. Money. Always money. Money was his universal solution. Broken car? Money. Missed rent? Money. Criminal charges? More money. At this point, I was pretty sure if Tyler got abducted by aliens, Dad would try financing the spaceship. I declined. Immediately. The conversation lasted less than a minute. Honestly, it might have set a personal record. The Olympic speed run of saying absolutely not. Afterward, I made coffee, sat on my back patio, watched birds. The contrast was hilarious. Somewhere across town, my family was reenacting the collapse of the Roman Empire. Meanwhile, I was arguing with a squirrel over ownership of my bird feeder. And honestly, the squirrel had a stronger legal argument than Tyler ever did. A few days later, something happened that genuinely surprised me. Patricia reached out, Jessica's mother. Now, historically speaking, every interaction I'd had with this woman felt like getting blamed for weather. Raining? My fault. Traffic? Probably my fault. Economic downturn? Let's investigate Michael. But this call felt different. No screaming. No guilt trips. No dramatic performances worthy of daytime television. Just exhaustion. The kind that settles into someone's bones. And apparently she'd been seeing things firsthand, which was unfortunate for her but fantastic for reality. Because reality had finally entered the chat. She'd watched Tyler bounce between excuses. Watched him dodge responsibility. Watched him turn every problem into somebody else's fault. And suddenly all those warnings I'd given months earlier stopped sounding cruel. They started sounding accurate. Funny how that works? People call you heartless right up until the evidence starts introducing itself. I wish I could say I felt vindicated. Actually, that's a lie. I absolutely felt vindicated. Like unbelievably vindicated. Petty levels of vindicated. Historic levels. If vindication were an Olympic sport, I would have broken records. But underneath that satisfaction was something else. Sadness. Not for Tyler. Let's not get carried away. I'm not a saint, but for what the whole situation represented. Because every single person involved had spent years pretending. Pretending Tyler would mature eventually. Pretending responsibility was right around the corner. Pretending adulthood was coming any minute now. And now everybody was discovering something ugly. There is no magical maturity fairy. Nobody arrives overnight. You become the person you've been practicing to be. And Tyler had been practicing irresponsibility for years. Meanwhile, life kept getting better for me, which sounds obnoxious. I know. Trust me. I hate those people too. The everything is amazing crowd. The human LinkedIn posts. But weirdly enough, it was true. Work got easier. Stress dropped. I started sleeping better. My blood pressure probably sent me a thank you card. The constant anxiety I'd carried for years started disappearing. And that's when I realized something disturbing. I hadn't just been managing my own life. I'd been mentally managing everybody else's too, for years. Keeping track of emergencies, preparing for disasters, anticipating requests, waiting for the next crisis. Like some unpaid family crisis manager. A job I never applied for. A job I never wanted. A job I finally quit. And once I quit, the silence was incredible. Not literal silence, mental silence. The kind you don't appreciate until you've lived without it. One evening, I was sitting in my living room assembling a bookshelf. Nothing exciting. Just me. A screwdriver. And instructions written by someone who clearly hated humanity. Seriously, furniture manuals are revenge literature. Anyway, halfway through building this thing, I realized something. Nobody had called all day. No emergencies. No drama. No demands. no guilt trips. Nothing. I actually sat there staring at the wall, waiting, like my brain expected chaos to kick the door down. But it didn't. Hours passed, still nothing. And suddenly a thought hit me. What if this is normal? What if normal people spend entire days not dealing with family catastrophes? Wild concept. Revolutionary, somebody alert scientists. Then came the final little crack in the illusion. Grandma called. And unlike everybody else, Grandma dealt exclusively in uncomfortable truths. The woman had reached the age where social filters simply evaporate. Aging is fascinating. Eventually, people either become sweet old ladies or savage historians. Grandma chose violence. Apparently, she'd started asking questions, looking at timelines, looking at money, looking at patterns, actually examining reality instead of family mythology. And what she found wasn't pretty. Dad wasn't helping Tyler. Dad had been protecting Tyler from growth. Huge difference. One creates stability. The other creates dependency. And suddenly all those years started making sense. Every rescue, every bailout, every excuse, every second chance, they weren't acts of love. They were acts of fear. Dad wasn't saving Tyler. He was terrified of letting Tyler fail. So he kept delaying the lesson, year after year, problem after problem, until eventually the lesson arrived anyway. Only now it was bigger, more expensive, and impossible to ignore. And sitting there after that call ended, staring around my quiet house, I realized something. The battle wasn't really over property, or money, or spare bedrooms. It never had been. The real fight was over reality itself. And reality was finally winning. The scary part. Once reality starts collecting its debts, it charges interest. 3 months later, everything finally collapsed. Not dramatically, not with some giant movie ending, just one ugly domino after another. Tyler failed a drug test, then skipped community service, then violated probation, then got hauled straight back to jail. Game over. I found out while eating tacos on my couch. That's it. No dramatic soundtrack, no victorious speech. Just me sitting there with hot sauce on my shirt thinking, wow, he actually managed to make everything worse. Again. At that point, it almost felt impressive. Like watching somebody continuously miss the exit on a highway with only one road. Meanwhile, Jessica left, took the baby, moved in permanently with her mother. From what I heard, she was done waiting for Tyler to magically become a responsible adult. Solid decision. Probably the first smart decision anyone involved had made in months. Dad took it the hardest, because reality had finally murdered his favorite fantasy. The fantasy that Tyler was just one lucky break away from turning everything around. No, Tyler wasn't unlucky. He was Tyler. Big difference. A month later, my childhood home got sold. That one caught me off guard. Not emotionally, just weirdly. One day it existed. The next day, strangers were moving furniture inside. Done. Finished. Gone. The house where everything happened. All those birthdays. Arguments. Awkward dinners. Dad's excuses. Tyler's disasters. Sold. Like none of it mattered. Honestly, maybe it didn't. I drove by once. Kids were playing basketball in the driveway. The place looked happier already, which was rude. Good for them, but rude. Around the same time, I started dating Jennifer. Normal person. Steady job. No secret criminal record. No family members hiding in moving trucks. The bar was apparently underground by then. Still, refreshing. The first time I showed her the security footage, she stared at the screen for a full minute, then looked at me, then looked back at the screen, then looked at me again, like she was trying to determine whether I was secretly making a documentary. There's no way this is real. I wished it wasn't. Trust me. The fence stayed. The cameras stayed. The restraining order stayed. But the chaos didn't. That's what surprised me. One day, my phone just stopped. No angry messages. No guilt trips. No random relatives emerging from retirement to share opinions. Nothing. Silence. Beautiful silence. The kind that almost makes you suspicious. I kept waiting for another disaster. Another U-Haul. Another scheme. Another crisis. But eventually I realized something. There wasn't another chapter. That was it. The story was over. One evening, I was sitting in my backyard watching the sunset. Nothing special. Just a normal Tuesday. Jennifer was inside making dinner. My phone wasn't ringing. Nobody needed money. Nobody was blaming me for anything. Nobody was trying to move into my house. The air was quiet. The house was quiet. My life was quiet. And after everything that happened, that felt almost unreal. Then I caught myself smiling. Not because Tyler was in jail. Not because Dad was miserable. Not because I won. Honestly, nobody won. The whole thing was too stupid for winners. I smiled because I was finally home. Actually home. No drama waiting at the door. No chaos hiding around the corner. Just peace. 3 years earlier, I bought a house. I thought that was the achievement. Turns out it wasn't. Keeping it mine was. Anyway, that's the end of today's chaos. Hopefully your family drama is a little less eventful than this one. Take care of yourself, relax, and I'll catch you in the next story.